Welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skills. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Don Grant.
All right, I got Jona Cole here, and I'm so excited for you to be a part of this podcast for all the different hats that you wear, including the Cole Gunsmithing and with your husband, Rich, and then you are a clay shooter as well. And I think, you have some great stories to talk about and some insights related to just this journey that you've been on related to the clay shooting industry. So thanks for being on here with me, Jona.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody who doesn't know who you are, which I'd be amazed if they didn't, but who are you?
I'm sure there are a lot of people that do not. I am Jona Cole and married to Rich Cole. We own Cole Fine Guns and Gunsmithing. We have 3 locations in Naples, Florida, San Antonio, Texas, and Harpswell, Maine. We have a website. I think a lot of people probably don't know that we haven't been together for 1,000 years. Got together about 15 years ago. I am a social worker by trade. At all, no experience in the for-profit world, no experience in the shooting world or shotgun world at all prior to 2009. And I met Rich and just couldn't really have imagined this journey that we have been on and this business, and became so involved in the business that I am no longer a social worker, although I like to think that I still do have that heart and that mind. And so I do find myself looking for opportunities within our work to give back to the community and be a part of the community and look for.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I have to do that because otherwise, like, I'm not, I can
Being
sit
true to
down.
yourself. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And so I didn't think that I would be able to find those ways to participate, but I certainly have. And the business keeps me busy enough. When we first moved to Florida, I said, I don't think I'll have enough to do. I'll need to volunteer at the hospital or at the homeless shelter, and I have not needed to find other opportunities because there has been a lot for me to do.
Yeah. And, anybody who follows you on social media, you always do really positive and uplifting posts that are pretty cool. And I didn't realize you had a social worker background. So that explains a lot for me. I remember, what was that big old Category 5 hurricane that came in through your area? I mean, you headed up really gathering supplies and everything.
Yes. Hurricane Irma. That was a big hurricane. We lost, some portions of our roof during that, and it was a big, it went right up through where our shop was, and that was quite a thing. A lot of people had it a lot worse than we did, for sure.
Yeah. So you are a shooter as well. How often do you get to shoot?
I do not shoot very often. I think when I first started in the business, I was very gung-ho for shooting. And then it became, I think when you may feel this way or not, when you are working 50, 60 hours a week in a certain field, when you do have a little bit of downtime, you don't want to do something that's related to your work. And I think for Rich and I, Rich has always felt strongly that he did not want to compete with his customers. And that's just a decision that he made before I met him. He just has always sort of been that way. And the schedule and the pace that we have kept just really doesn't allow for anything more than recreational shooting at charity events.
Mm-hmm.
I have taken some lessons over the years. I have felt like, boy, it probably would be really good for business if I were shooting some registered targets and we're out there with the people. I just want to be out there with the people, socializing and being with them. I'm a very competitive person, so
Right.
I feel as though it might not be good, really, for me to be out there. Like, I could be out there and shake hands and kiss babies and get to know the families and root the kids on. And I am really good at that. I think that if I were out there competing and I had that sort of competitive piece that came in, people might just think, well, she's just a horrible person to be
Not
around.
good for business. Quite the opposite of your
That's right.
intention.
And the reality is, I am probably a 70% shooter. I'm not now. I tell myself that, well, if I practiced or if I took more lessons then I'd be better than that. I don't know whether I would or not. And I
Yeah.
think that when I do have free time, I want to spend it with my family and with my grandchildren and doing things other than shooting. And I get horrible headaches. So I'm
Yeah.
also a wimp when it comes. It's
Yeah.
like I'll shoot 100 targets and then I'm done for the rest of the day because I've got a migraine. So I sort of have to pick and choose how I spend my time, and I'd much rather run around with my grandchildren than try to do something. I want to be really, really good at it, or I don't really want to do it.
Yeah. I got it. Well, that's a good thing to know about yourself.
That's right.
So you were full time doing social work when you met Rich?
I was. Yep,
Yeah.
I was. I was.
What was your
At
clientele?
time, I think at that time I actually had moved into a role as a grant writer. I was
Oh.
doing some event planning and grant writing for a homeless shelter. And so primarily my clientele were, even prior to being a grant writer, I was in homelessness and housing services, housing subsidies for people with special needs, primarily people with substance abuse issues, people with mental health issues, families with economic challenges, and really housing. And for many folks, developing programs so that they could be in the least restrictive environment, maybe moving people out of group homes and into apartments and programs with community supports and those sorts of things. So mostly housing, homeless,
Oh,
hoping
wow.
that we could find a roof over every head, and never was able to accomplish that, but we still work at that.
Yeah. So how
Yeah.
did you and Rich meet each other?
We met through friends of friends. I would say at that time that we met, we were both riding motorcycles. So there were a group of people that would get together and ride motorcycles who were sober, people in recovery, and we met in that way. So it was a group of people. We hopped on motorcycles. I had been single for 2 solid years for the first time really ever in my life.
Yeah.
And I always joke and say I had finally realized that I really liked being single. And I think I'm going to stay single. Like, I really like this. Who knew? I'm
Right.
38 years old and I'm just realizing that I like being single. And then Rich
That
Cole happened to me. I don't know what. I broke all of my own rules about just.
isn't that, I mean, people say that's what happens, right? That's,
Yeah, that is what
yeah.
happened. That is what happened. And he keeps things very interesting. And so I just could not ignore that he's very, very smart, but yet very quirky. And so there's just a combination that, to me, I don't think that he's not for everyone. So but to me, I just can't ignore this just
Yeah.
because I think that I've decided I want to be single. I have to see where this might go.
And he was already 2 feet into the whole gunsmithing and everything, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
2 feet, like passion with a capital P. He went to work for Beretta actually in 1979 as a gunsmith, and I was only 11 years old at that time.
Wow.
I do like to throw that in there too. And when I think about that, like 1979, holy cow, that, like, you were already a grown up, and I
What's the age difference?
12 years.
Okay. Yeah, Joe and I are 15.
Yeah.
All the
So,
time people are like, is that your dad? What would your dad like? We laugh at it, but yeah.
well, I think that it works.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it works. So he went to work for Beretta as a gunsmith apprentice and then went out on his own. I think he realized maybe the corporate life wasn't exactly, he wasn't well suited for that.
I could see that.
And although he had always wanted to be a gunsmith, his father said, that's not a real job. That's a hobby. You know, you'll never be able to make a living. And he's the kind of person that says, tell me I can't and let me show you.
Yeah.
So he went to work for Beretta as an apprentice. Then he moved to Maine, where he had two sisters, and just decided to fix some guns and do some lobster fishing. And he was a mason tender for some guy that built chimneys and had
Okay.
several jobs, but he really, really just wanted to be a gunsmith. And so over time, in 1985, I think was when he incorporated. So he started the business a full 25, 30 years before I met him. So yeah, for sure.
And then was it in Maine that you guys met? Because you're from
Yes.
Maine. Okay, that makes
Yep.
sense then. Yeah, because we had talked before we started recording on how you're both spending a lot of time in Maine, as well as your home in Florida, which is awesome.
Yes.
So you transition over and you start helping him or working with him in that business. What roles did you play over time with that?
Well, we moved when we decided to go to Florida. The way that happened, that was never part of the plan. I think some people think, well, oh, it was a great business plan. There was no real business plan. We went scuba diving.
Okay.
We decided to take a month off, and it was early in our relationship, maybe like 3 months in. And of course, so he's like, I'm gonna take a month off. I'm going scuba diving. We went, and as we were leaving the Florida Keys, we drove up the West Coast instead of going back up 95. I had never been really spent any time on the West Coast, and I thought, this is really lovely.
Pretty, yeah.
Pretty.
Pretty.
I wonder, it must cost a fortune to live here. And at that time, everything was in foreclosure. It was a really good time
Okay.
to buy. And so I thought, well, maybe we should. I mean, I'm saying we've been together a total of 3 months, and I'm saying we should
Yeah, we
do this.
should.
But well, I'm just going to look into it because I love real estate. I love to look at houses. I love to look at property, even if I've never even I like to look at property in Wyoming because I've never been to Wyoming, but I just look online because I think I love it.
Yeah, I
So
got you.
I started looking, and then as I'm looking at property, realizing how inexpensive things are, we're riding up and down these roads and all these houses are boarded up, and
wow.
which is very sad to me, like as a housing professional, right? Like in my heart, I'm like, oh my gosh, part of me is like, how can I help these people not lose their home? And the other part of me is like, well, if they're going to lose it, then maybe I want to buy it. Like, it's horrible. Isn't that horrible? Horrible.
It's a good deal and a good location.
And
Nice.
so then we started thinking, well, I wonder, this will make you laugh. I wonder if there's any shooting going on around here in Florida.
Okay.
This is how Mainers are very myopic, I think. Like we're in our own little world and not necessarily realizing what else is going on. And so we started looking at sporting clays courses on, like where they were in Florida, and realized that there is a lot of shooting going on. And so then within 2 hours, I was calling around to all of the county offices to see who would allow gunsmithing as a home occupation. I mean, it just one thing led to another. I honestly do not know how it happened because it was not part of the plan. We contacted a couple of clubs and said, do you think if we came down here and built a little shop to do some backyard gunsmithing in the wintertime or some custom work, do you think anybody would like that. And people are like, yeah, we think
Yeah.
people would like that. And we bought a house, little teeny tiny 1,200 square foot house, needed a lot of work. And we thought, we'll fix it up. We built a little building for a shop, and I could not keep, we were going to just be there like 4 months out of the year and then come back to
Okay.
Maine and not have employees and not have retail. I don't know what happened. Now we have employees and we have a retail spot. And because I couldn't keep the guys out of my backyard. I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't publish the address, but all it took was one person to find us, and then the next thing I knew, just here comes somebody else with their shotgun, and it's not, Rich is not going to turn somebody away. And so
Mm-hmm.
it just became more than the two of us could handle. So what was I doing? That was your question. What was I doing there? I was doing the books, and I was doing shipping, packing,
Mm-hmm.
receiving, because most people were supposed to be just shipping their guns in, not coming there, because we're in a residential place
Right.
and not an HOA, not a gated community. We had, a little bit of acreage. And so the neighbors, it was allowed. We were not really, but it wasn't supposed to be, 25 people coming to your house in the day.
Right.
So I was packing things, shipping things, ordering things, communicating back and forth with the shop in Maine, and just doing it was immediately a full-time thing.
Wow.
Only 4 months the first year, but the second year we didn't even come back to Maine in the summer. So it really took off.
Holy, that is really fast.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and
Well, there
glad.
is a really big need for good quality shotgun gunsmiths, no matter where
Mm-hmm.
you go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my son had considered doing it for a little while. But yeah, he was told by several people, you won't make enough money at that to have a comfortable living.
Well, and I think it really does depend. And as
Mm-hmm.
I said, Rich's father told him that. And his father was a Depression era
Mm.
person who always, the sky is falling and you just have
Yeah.
to be prepared. And I think gunsmithing as a hobbyist, I think he couldn't have imagined what Rich is doing today, because
Yeah.
it didn't really exist in that time. And so I think that I can understand, and I think it probably depends on what kind of living someone does feel that they need to make.
Well, true.
You're not going to make a seven-figure salary probably as a
Mm-hmm.
gunsmith. Six-figure salary after many years of hard work, maybe, if our situation is everything that we make really goes back into the business.
Mm.
And I think that we may finally be reaching the point where we're looking at that a little bit differently, because Rich will be 68 years old next month. Not next month, this month.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes that his entire retirement is wrapped up in that business. And so I think that maybe he'll start paying himself a salary that would be something that somebody else might like. I think young people today seem to want to make a lot of money right away. And
Yeah.
so it really depends on someone's passion. Rich gave up a $13 an hour construction job when he was 21 years old to work for $5 an hour for Beretta.
Wow.
He really wanted to be a gunsmith. So I think that, and all he had was a pickup truck and a dog.
Wow.
So he was able to do that. At that time, he didn't have any kids, he didn't have a mortgage. So I think it really depends on what you want to do. I think having the niche business
Mm-hmm.
too has allowed him to sort of be on the map with the right demographic,
Mm-hmm.
and to sort of work toward being expert at something as opposed to being just so at a whole bunch of things. So
Yeah.
I think that a decent living can be made. We're very fortunate now. We have 6 gunsmiths that are training and that are working with us, and they are all but one 40 or under.
Nice.
So there's one young man who's 19, and he started as an apprentice, but he has a great aptitude, and he is doing a wonderful job. Will he make six figures next year? Probably not. But I think that he'll be able to afford his rent and his car payment and to feed himself. And I think it really depends on what it is that someone really needs to make or feels that they want to make. And I think if they have I am this way. If I have a passion for something, I'm willing to sacrifice some of the dollars.
Right. So true. So
Yeah.
true. So, what role do you play now? What are you doing on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I'm not working as much as I was. I am primarily, I would say, the interface between our management team, which consists of a general manager, finance manager, a marketing manager, and then each shop has a store manager. So I'm the interface between those folks and Rich and us. I am working a lot with our finance person. Up until 3 years ago, we didn't have any managers and we didn't have a finance person. We had me and
Yeah.
we didn't have a marketing person. We didn't have a general manager. It was really just Rich and I trying to manage all the things. Probably about 5 years too late, we realized that we were you cannot be good at everything.
Yeah.
And as a social worker, I was able to piece some things together. I had a business background from college, but I'm not an accountant. And sometimes the CPA would ask me for something, and I would think, oh, I hadn't even considered that. And so I just learned that we needed more people to help us run the business. So I'm in the process of a big process of letting go, trying to let go of the control, because I've always just laid awake at night worrying about what I didn't attend to, what I didn't get done, what could go wrong, what customer might not have gotten called, did they get their tracking number. I was very, very involved in the everyday day oversight for all three shops. And then now suddenly I am taking a step back, because if you hire people to manage, you have to let them manage.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because I do trust them, but I also feel this sense of obligation that I need to be working. I need to be doing things that are helpful to the cause and helpful to the team. And so, if I'm being honest, I'm probably floundering a little bit right now and trying to figure out what my role is supposed to be, because I've hired these really good people who do a great job for us, and I have to let them do it. And
Yeah.
so, I probably am trying now just to be available to them, but not insert myself in ways that are not helpful.
That makes total sense. I've owned Amelia Shotgun Sports for almost 7 years now, and it wasn't until the last year that I was able to step away some. My son and his wife are the ones basically running it. Now, I do all the major admin type things and all the major decisions, and I keep keep my thumb on the money and anything like the payables and payroll and everything. I also have the mental training business. So they've actually, by them being reliable and trustworthy and all that, I've been able to focus on the mental training business more and do things like podcasts and all that. But it feels weird, right? Because honestly, I'm going there like maybe 3 times a month and everything's going well, but it feels weird. And if I didn't have the mental training business, I'd be like, what do I do with myself? And I feel guilty even if I wasn't there. I could totally see that.
Yes. I want to appear not helpful. I don't want to give the impression that I'm not interested in how things are going.
Yeah.
With a good flow now, I think, of information sharing back and forth between our management team and ourselves. Every week we have a meeting where they can tell us whatever it is that they're wanting to share, whether it's the financials or products or product development, that sort of thing. But I'm enjoying actually just I let them know I'm available if they need me, but I'm going to go and spend time with my granddaughter. I'm going to spend time with my mother. We're building this barn here, and I'm painting and I'm hammering and I'm
Wow.
hours and things that really for 15 years I've not had the time to do because we have just worked. And so, but it does feel strange to be on screech for such a long time and then now have a little teeny bit of downtime. And I miss the people. Like I miss
Mm.
a lot of our kids now are like senior in high school or going off to college.
Yeah.
I think, when I say our kids, like our Team Cole kids, and I used to just be following them everywhere they go, and I'd be texting with their parents every competition, or I'd be at the competition and I'd be taking all their pictures, and so I feel a little bit in a limbo, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really good thing, and I think from a personal growth standpoint, at 55 years old, it's I'm getting to see what's next that
Yes.
I'd like to do because, and I wondered whether I was going to go here with this with you, but I am going to because I think it's
Okay.
important. This business is Rich's passion.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'm a person that gives 100% to whatever it is that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
what I've done for the past 15 years, but I realize that it is not my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm not going to go back into social work full time, but it is a time for me to figure out what my passion is and what
Yeah.
what my thing is. What's my next thing that I'm going to do? I don't think that it will have nothing to do with the business. I
Mm-hmm.
think that I need to find a way to involve myself in certain aspects of the business more, like the youth programs, which I
Yeah.
about and which I do love, which I haven't had really the time that I wanted or the money that I wanted to devote to it.
Mm-hmm.
That it probably, I will focus a little bit more on that going forward.
I love that. And it's so true. And to have that insight is so important. And be curious to see, how you splinter off and really merge it with who you truly are, and that part of you that is your archetype, your unconscious, it's your life purpose related to something about your personality and social work, like whatever that is under there. And that would be cool to see how you intertwine it. Yeah, you had mentioned kind of relearning and figuring out what to do with your time and being in limbo. And my shotgun club is closed on Tuesday, Wednesdays, but my mental training is open Monday through Friday. And so for 7 years, I've worked 7 days a week for sure. And like any entrepreneur, that's not normal hours. It's usually
Right.
12-hour days, if not more. The last few weeks, it's been more like 15-hour days. And I find myself missing a weekend, like the weekend that I used to have when I was a kid in school. That feeling of it being Friday and you waking up and it's Saturday, and what you do on Saturday was pancakes, and more leisurely. And um, I haven't experienced that since probably my kids were toddlers and I was in my mid to late 20s. And so I'm like yearning for the feeling of a real weekend, and we'll be trying everything possible to try to make it happen because I have to make it. I love what I do and I'm passionate about it. And so I can get sucked into it for days and weeks and not have time off. So it feels foreign. Like literally yesterday, I said to Joe, "You're going to have to help me figure out what a weekend is." Like, I don't even know what that means at my age anymore. Because the other thing, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when you're self employed, I mean, if you have a 2 o'clock appointment, you can make it happen, So we go fishing sometimes at 2 o'clock on a weekday, or we go get a mani pedi or a massage at noon on a Wednesday. So it's been a moving, flexible weekend, if you want to say, or free time. But that feeling of smushing it into 2 days where I'm not going to do any work, it's foreign. It's
Yeah.
foreign.
Yeah. And it's very challenging, I think. And I don't know if you have this issue or not, but there's that feeling of guilt if I'm not being productive every minute.
Yes.
It's
I
it's
carry it related to my employees too. Like if
yeah,
I'm not at the club, and if I go, let's say I go to the beach, although I haven't been to the beach in forever, but let's say it was 2 o'clock or I went to get a mani pedi at 2 o'clock on a Thursday. The club's open.
are
I
you horrible about that?
I I feel like they're working and I'm at a mani pedi, and then I'm like, oh no, Dawn, you worked till midnight last night, and you worked till midnight the last 3 days, and so I have to very purposely remind myself. The other thing I've noticed is just like how I spend my money too. Like I just a personal thing. I like nice cars, probably the way you guys like a motorcycle, right? I love a good driving car. I love convertibles. So, I typically have a nice car, and I'm pulling up in my little Mercedes convertible, and I'm like, how do these employees feel looking at me driving around a Mercedes while they're working for, whatever. I do pay them well, but they're not like six figures. And I just like have to really work through not letting that bother me and reminding myself I'm the one with the responsibilities on my shoulder. I'm the one that has to make sure that they are all fed and can feed their families and can, pay the $20,000 bill this month and the 30,000 one next month and still sleep at night.
I think that our employees, I realize that they don't understand. They might see that the revenue this month was X amount of dollars because they sold X amount of shotguns. But what they don't realize that the insurance,
Yeah.
the doors, the just the expenses that it takes to even have a sign on the building and a building to go into to go to work, and the payroll expenses, and if the people paid with a credit card, how much profit of that comes out in the credit card fee, and all of the things. And so once in a while we will what I would say is a non-extravagant lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
just because that's just the way that we are. But there are times that, like what you're saying, will happen if Rich bought a tractor to be able to work on this property here. And I think that sometimes we're like, well, I wonder if people think, well, where did the money come from to buy that tractor? And Rich was like, what do you mean? Do they think where the money comes from? I've been earning it for 40 years, and we have employees that make more money than we do. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, but I think they don't realize that. And so I think that there's that piece of it where if they, if we appreciate what they do and we pay them, we want to pay our employees as much as we possibly can
Mm-hmm.
based on what the business can afford to pay. And I think that it has taken some time to have the right team of folks that really get that. And I think that we're getting there. I think most of our people know that we're not just sitting in the Bahamas with our feet up counting our money.
Yeah. Yeah,
If we want to
definitely.
buy a nice car or we want to buy a tractor to work on our property, then that's okay. But I think that just our hearts tell us that, maybe it isn't okay. And I have to counter that with, just it is okay. And I worked before I was a social worker, I worked for a landlord who had an enormous amount of money. And at 21, 22 years old, I did not understand how he could have so much and I could have so little because I worked so hard for him.
Mm.
And so I understand that sometimes you just don't have enough life experience to really get it until you get a little bit older.
When I was in my, I guess mid-20s, I was married at the time to my children's father, and he was a sole proprietor of painting, subcontractor for painting, and he had an older guy that he would actually the guy didn't have his license. He lived a very simple life, and so my ex would go pick him up every morning and drop him off at the job, and that's the guy who would paint. And my ex, he'd go golfing for the day, and I used to be like, why is that guy doing that? Like, he knows how much you're bidding on the job because he helps you bid it out. He knows how much you're getting paid, and he lets you pick him up and drop him off. He had said to me, because he doesn't want the responsibility.
Right.
And that was a big like light bulb moment for me back then. Like the owner, the entrepreneur, whatever, they're willing to put that weight on their shoulders and to carry that. And fortunately, my brain doesn't stress about it. Like I'm not sitting there wondering if I can pay my employees and whether they can afford to eat. I don't think about that. Thank goodness. Otherwise, the responsibility would probably get to me because I would be worried about it so there is a lot that goes into it for sure.
Joys of being a business owner.
Yeah, there's so many pros and cons, and for me one of the cons has been that I will work way too much and I need to find that balance and then figure it out what it even is, which I can relate to what you're saying there.
Scary too for people who do work like that and have worked like that. If there is a little bit of downtime, it's almost unnerving. I remember the first time that Rich and we came to Maine in November, and it was really the first, I think we took a vacation 8 years ago for 1 week. And then in November 2 years ago, we took a whole week and came to Maine and stayed in a little cabin with no running water and no electricity. And this was, he said this is what he wanted to do. He's like, I need a break. I need to get away. And it wasn't even 24 hours. And he was having a little mini meltdown about, is this what retirement would be like?
Mm.
I have literally nothing to do right now. There's no job, there's no person calling me, there's no aggravating email that I have to respond to. Like, it has become my life for so long to be at people's beck and call that
Yeah.
now, 24 hours into this silence, I don't even know if I could do it. And I said to him, I said, well, we're going to try. We're
Yeah,
here.
right.
Load that wood stove up because we're here for a week. And I think that it is since that time, it's been 2 years of an ebb and not always a graceful flow of trying to adjust to having a life outside of the work.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. I think it's really important for our family to have that from us as well. And I think that we certainly are just adjusting to it. I think that I had in my mind that we were headed into retirement.
Mm.
Doesn't seem to be happening. And I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do realize that I need to continue to seek some balance so that I give our team the opportunity to grow in their roles, and also so that I can figure out what it is that I might like to do. Like I said, I only want to do it if I'm really good at it. And so
Yeah.
I think that I need to find the things that I'm really good at and that I can enjoy. And that's part of the journey too, is exploring different things. I think about pottery sometimes. Like I want to try, I've never done pottery. I want to
Mm-hmm.
try some pottery, which seems like probably not what anybody would expect for me to say, but that just seems like a very zen kind of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, maybe I'll try some pottery.
You're onto something. Literally for a few years, well, ever since COVID, I've been haunted by art supplies. So, we're in lockdown and my daughter was home and she was like hating every second of it. So I had gone on Amazon, I bought a bunch of art supplies. I made a little art section in our living room, and that none of it has been used. It's still closed. I have an easel, but it haunts me. And even, Joe and I just bought a house together in March, and there's a beautiful pond out back and all. And he's like, what a great place to set up your easel. I'm like, you're right. If I could just do it. So, yeah, that's something I'll do on my new weekends.
That's right. That's Well, good luck with your new weekends for sure.
It's something really trying to figure it out. I totally understand. Like in my brain, I don't really want to turn on the TV because I do like watching mindless things, like series or whatever, like starting probably 8 o'clock, but I don't feel right about turning that TV on before 8 o'clock. And
Hmm.
so, and then I'm like, stop working till 8, Dawn, so I try to make myself stop working at a normal time and cooking a normal dinner And then I'm like, well, what do I do from 6 to 8? Like, I just don't even know what to do with myself.
Especially if you're forcing yourself not to work, because for me, the to-do list is so long that
Yeah.
the smallest amount of downtime, it's hard for me not to think about, well, I'm not doing anything right now. I could just go cross that off the list, but it's
Yes.
related. And
Mm-hmm.
so I could go and weed the garden, which I'll do that, and then I'm done weeding the garden, which I haven't even been able to have a garden until this summer. So this is progress, right?
It
This is like
is.
take an hour and weed the garden. The fact that there is a garden to weed, progress, because I've not had a garden for 15 years. I've not had a garden.
I
So this is
understand.
good. I just realized that that's something to celebrate.
That is something to celebrate, and I can relate on that. I'm, like, planning our garden right now. I'm picking out the plants for the new
Yes.
yard and looking forward to getting out there. So, and you and I are similar ages. And I think with the social work background, I think we have a lot in common. So I'm very much relating to what you're saying. And that caregiver, caretaker part, that wants to give and do and help. And that can translate over into giving and doing and helping in a business that isn't necessarily, I mean, it's your business because you're married, but it's not really your passion or your business. And next thing you know, you haven't done your passion here. So, where do you see yourself or even the gunsmithing in the next 5 to 10 years? Or both? Those are kind of two different things, aren't they?
Yeah, two different things, but interesting things. Myself, in 5 to 10 years, we had been what I thought was on a trajectory toward semi-retirement. Whenever I think we're going to slow it down or scale it back a little bit, Rich gets an idea, or Rich sees or Rich sees a problem that needs to be solved. And so he's a bit of a visionary. Retirement doesn't seem to be in the near future. So I would say, 5 years, I might like to have a little bit of downtime to do some hiking and do some herbal remedies and spend more time with my grandchildren. But also, I see that we are considering in the business some potential expansion, and with the focus on services, because I think that you and I would probably agree that because the shotgun sports are growing, more people have shotguns, more people have fine shotguns that need service, need customization, that need performance upgrades, that need fitting, that need stock making. And the number of people using those shotguns is growing. The number of people to perform that work is not growing. And
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that the gunsmith trade is suffering a little bit from new folks coming in. If you think about, who do we have for fine shotgun gunsmiths? I don't
Yeah.
hesitate to list them because I know that I'll leave someone out. But so we have Jim Greenwood. Everyone knows Jim. We have Mike Sherman. We have Lawrence Polinsky. We have Rich Cole. We have Les Pitt.
Less.
We have some great guys, but unfortunately, they're not going to live forever.
Yeah.
Eyesight's going to start to give way, or their hands. Rich has had carpal tunnel surgery. He's had eye surgery. He's doing all he can to try to keep it going. But the reality is that those guys are the go-to for so many of us, and they're aging out. And
Yeah.
Tim Ward is one of the young guys, and Mark Gadbaugh, and I shouldn't have started listing people because I certainly don't want to leave anyone out. Think about shotguns out there. I just mentioned less than 12 people who are able
Yes.
to competently work on those shotguns. Now, the manufacturers have a gunsmith or two in their employ. Caesar Guarini has more than that, probably. Some of the other large manufacturers in the US do not have a whole team of gunsmiths, and they farm much of their service out to folks like us. And we are very fortunate to have 7 young guys coming up in the trade, but that's hard to find.
Mm.
And so Rich is really focusing now on spending his time training. And I think making the services more accessible will require more people and probably more locations because it's getting harder to ship firearms in the United States.
Mm.
It is
Mm-hmm.
more difficult. The restrictions are just, there are more restrictions, not less restrictions. And so people who need to have service really are wanting, I think that people will be willing to pay to have the right people work on their shotguns if they can get to them. And so I think Rich feels that in some part it's our responsibility to try to make it more accessible for people. The guns
Yeah.
availability for fine shotgun gunsmithing in the Midwest is limited.
Yeah.
A lot of people shooting out there. And so I think that is sort of what I would say is in the next 5 to 10 years, we will be focusing on creating a scenario so that 10 years from now, there is a good pool of gunsmiths trained and knowledgeable in shotguns specifically. The gunsmithing schools do a great job, I think, of training folks who might be interested in rifle work, in pistol work,
Yes.
in some bluing technology, but because they don't really have instructors that are knowledgeable in the fine shotgun work, most of the folks that have come to us out of gunsmithing school, and we do try to recruit from gunsmithing school, they're not
Mm.
really ready to do gunsmithing that will generate revenue. Because when people send us their guns to be worked on, they make the assumption and have the expectation that a skilled person will be working on it. And so people have to be trained, and it takes a lot of years to be trained to do this work.
I'd mentioned earlier that my son was interested in the field for a while, and he's one of the ones that is very mechanically inclined. Like that's, he struggled in academic, he's extremely mechanically inclined. Like he loves working on the trap machines and all that. And so he wanted to go down the gunsmithing road. And he actually did work with Mike Sherwin for a little while. But what had happened was, so Charlie's 25 now. That he was probably 23 at the time. He'd been in a relationship with a young woman for like 4 or 5 years already. They were definitely moving in the direction of getting married. She's got family up here. He's got family here. They're both working at my shotgun club. And it would have meant him, picking up everything and moving and getting paid a very minimum amount that he probably couldn't even live off of. So he made a kind of more of a life decision related to keeping his job, moving forward in his relationship, and not moving. And so I think that's another obstacle is if you got great people like Rich and they're only in certain spots and able to train like people, that's an obstacle. Like these young folks have to be able to pick up and move, or at least live there for a period of time. And also assume, I don't know what your guys' deal is with your youth, but pay them not very much because they're just in training, if they get paid anything, right?
The apprentice concept is fabulous, but it's not realistic because
Yeah.
people have bills to pay. And so it's unfortunate that we're in a situation where, so we have so one of the gunsmiths in Naples is our son. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were able to move him down and sort of help him get himself established. And he's married and has 3 children now. And so he's good.
Yeah.
But two of the others have relocated to Naples because that's where the training is available with Rich.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's very, very expensive to live in Naples. And
Yeah.
we've had to do a lot of fancy footwork to get these guys that want to be gunsmiths, that have the mechanical aptitude, and really work very hard to get them up to speed so that they could bill enough for us to pay them and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to afford to live.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the young men moved from Vermont to come to work for us, and he lived in our gun shop for 18 months.
Oh, wow.
We have a bedroom in there because when we first opened that shop, Rich and I were spending 15, 18 hours a day, and it didn't make any sense to go home. So
Yeah.
we had the bedroom set up, and that is where this young man lived for 18 months because he was trying to find an apartment that was affordable. He has since been able to do that, and in 2 years' time has come up to speed and is very, very capable to do a lot of repairs and can bill enough so that we can afford to pay him.
Yeah.
Another young man from Connecticut moved down and luckily has a wife that makes enough money to help during those early days. But
Mm.
after 3 years, he's a very competent gunsmith and stockmaker. So we're very excited and very fortunate. But that has not come easily. And I
Yeah.
that is probably a situation and an issue that a lot of folks will have going forward if someone like Rich doesn't sort of make it his business or his take it upon himself to help in recruiting and training some new.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that looks like, but it doesn't sound like retirement to me.
It does not, but it sounds like a great mission for good cause.
Well, and I think for Rich, if he doesn't have to be standing at the bench 8 hours a day doing the actual work, but he can do the training and he can consult with people and he can work with customers who are having
Mhm.
a particular issue and he can do some stock making and some specialized stuff. That is the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I could understand. Totally understand that. Well, that feels like a lot of weight there.
Well, again, passion. So we're fortunate that he has the passion because he could retire years ago. And apparently that just isn't in the cards because whenever there's a little bit of a downtime, he'll just go and jump on his excavator and then he comes back and he's ready to work. So I think that he's just still has too much of a drive and too much passion for the business for real retirement to be a reality.
I could understand that. When you do what you love and you love what you do and you're passionate about it, I mean, you're just waking up inspired to action. You can't even turn it off. You're like, somebody turn this off, but no, I just wake up inspired to the new action and the next action and the new ideas. And yeah,
That's right.
it's something.
We're very lucky that we're in that situation.
Yeah, very cool. So, what would be one piece of advice or wisdom or insight that you would want to pass on to listeners from your experiences?
From my experience, because I'm more on the customer service end of
Mhm.
things, I would say this will seem self-serving, but I think it's real. And I would bet that any support person that works in a gunsmithing or service business would echo this. Be nice to your gunsmiths.
Yeah. Good one.
Working very, very hard, and we care very much about providing good quality service. We are not perfect. We are human.
Mhm.
And when a business grows the way that our business has grown and the industry grows so that the demand grows, sometimes you can keep up with the demand, and sometimes there are little bumps in the road and hiccups. And I think that if people understood how much we do care and how hard we try on a daily basis, and that we don't employ people who don't have the same values around that,
Mm.
they would realize that those people are really doing the best that they can and they really do want to provide good service. Because I think that, and I understand this as a consumer too, when I buy something and it breaks or it doesn't work properly or it doesn't fit properly or it somehow doesn't meet my expectations, for a moment I feel as though I'm the only one and they
Mm.
pay attention to me and they should take care of my problem immediately.
Right.
And then I remember that I'm not the only one. And so I try to take a deep breath and give people the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, these folks are doing the best that they can and it does matter. And it does matter to us. 99% of our clients and customers are amazing and wonderful. But I will focus on the 1% that's giving us a hard time and worry about that. So I think that would give that advice. And I would say, if anyone has ideas, I welcome this, ideas about
Mm,
how to continue to support the youth coming up in the sport so that perhaps they don't drop off when they don't have to drop off. They're not forced to drop off when they have to start paying for it themselves. Like, I've thought about
mm,
a foundation of some sort to keep people, maybe they can't shoot every registered event or every NSCA regional, or but to keep people shooting during that time period where usually mom and dad stop being able or willing to pay for it, and then they're
mm-hmm.
going off and going to college and getting their job to whereby, and then they're having children, and sometimes they aren't able to shoot for 20 years. I think that some industry professionals will not invest in youth because they feel as though they're just going to stop shooting as soon as their parents aren't paying for it any longer. And I've
Yeah.
hard not to give in to that mindset, because I think that if we can all do our part to help support, to keep people shooting, maybe if they're going to have to shoot a little less, make some sacrifices, but to keep that passion, then they'll have children that they will bring into the sport. And I honestly feel that there's no better sport for young people when you talk about, and I loved your little skit that you did talking about the youth and how
Mm,
it promotes togetherness with families. It gives dads and daughters something to do when the daughter's a teenager and you just don't even know what to do with it. Like, what do I do?
mm-hmm.
Teenage girl. I love my dads and daughters and my moms and sons and my dads and sons and the family piece of this industry. I think if we all can be mindful to help find a way to promote that going
Yeah.
forward, that would be a dream for me. Like, there's a social worker in me just wanting to, keep families out there shooting, and responsible, mature, young people. Clay's kids are the best kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And it is such a great sport for youth is or activity even because you think about at a young age there has to be an adult with that kid, right? It's not like you can drop the kid off at the movies or something like that. They're going to shoot. You're the responsible parent, you're the responsible adult, you're going to be with them, and it almost forces that put the phone down and have quality time with your kid here. And there's not very many activities or sports like that because like I said, I mean, you go to skating rink, you can sit down. You don't have to skate with your kid. There's so many things that aren't really as interactive, and this forces, in a good way, that relationship and helping and supporting and moving on from a miss and still it's okay. You got this. And I agree with you because shooting's cool, right?
It,
So for
it's
a
so
parent, yeah, a parent to say, "Come on, honey, let's go shooting." Of course, that kid, even if they're in the rebellious stage, is going to be like, "Okay, sure, I'll go shoot a gun."
Yes, and I think that it has saved many kids that might have, reached a point at 10, 12, 14 years old. I'm going to go in this direction. Or, wow, I went and shot some clay targets with my dad, and I really could get into that. And I think that getting into that almost, not 100%, but in my observation, almost guarantees that kid is going to choose a good path, and a
Yeah.
path more maturity and more responsibility, more respect for their parents, more interaction with other kids who are flying real high. Like, there are some amazing kids, not just the competitive shooters that we see, but kids that are just out on the weekends with their dad. They're going hunting,
Mm.
they're going shooting. It really, I think that it's a special thing, because you're not just putting Johnny on the school bus saying you go off to football practice or go off to basketball practice and we'll see you later. It's they must interact. They're hopping in the car and driving 8 hours to SCTP nationals, or 12 hours to
Mm.
SCTP nationals, and spending 10 days with a whole bunch of other kids and parents doing the same thing. It's pretty
Hmm.
pretty.
I agree. I agree. Well, great insights and great information, Jonah. I think that's all. I love that. I love talking with you. And I think you and I have realized we have a lot in common through this whole process. So
For
it's been
sure.
fun.
Thank you for having.
Yeah, I want to tell all the listeners you can get some free goodies on my website, dawngrant.com/free. And it's whether it's my mental training or my Mind Mastered app or even free golf cart or push cart at my shotgun club. And Jonna, so give us your contact information, website. How can people either get a hold of you or the business because they need you guys?
Our website is bit of a new website in process, www.colegun.com. One gun, not plural.
Okay.
I can be reached personally at my first name, Jona, Jona, at colegun.com. We have our stores. There's one number to call. It's a 1-800-650-COLE, and that will enter into a queue where you can pick the Florida shop or the Texas shop or the Maine shop, service or parts or sales, and our folks will be excited to hear from you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and follow Jonna on social media because she's very inspiring. I love your posts, and I love to see what you guys are up to and between Maine and Florida and all the cool stuff you're doing. But also, you're really inspiring. So there's some good posts that you put out there, and folks can follow me and any of my businesses on all the social media as well. And I hope to see any of you guys at Amelia Shotgun Sports, whether you just want to come practice or shoot one of the NSCA events. So thank you again.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Dawn Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dawngrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Dawn wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.